My name is Jocelyn Mercer, but most people call me Jackie. If you ask my mother, the only number that mattered that night was the one printed at the bottom of the check. She picked the kind of steakhouse that serves shadows with the sirloin. Valet out front, marble inside, lighting so dim she could catch her reflection without catching a flaw. She invited a curated chorus, relatives and extras who clap on cue. I wasn't so much invited as expected. Same with the bill. I arrived late enough to be noticed, not late enough to be accused. They were halfway through appetizers. Becca flicked her eyes from her phone like my entrance interrupted an important conversation between her and her own reflection. Dad didn't look up. Mom waved the laziest little wave, the kind you give a waiter who's slow with the water. 12 people total, cousins, aunts, 2 women I didn't recognize auditioning for New Best Friend Who Loves Your Hair. Dinner dragged. I let their voices braid into a rope that never learned to pull. Becca performed her wine review side hustle like it was already greenlit by Netflix. Dad dropped backhanded wisdom about how some of us work for a living. Mom smiled like a hostess at a themed exhibit called Family, but Make It Luxe. Then Dad stood and tapped his glass. At first, I readied myself for the standard toast, the syrupy, "To my beautiful wife." Instead, he said, "To a new beginning. Starting today, we are no longer a family." There was a second where the room tried to decide whether to breathe. Then someone actually clapped, not loudly, just enough to make it real. I heard a soft "finally" from somewhere near the bread plates. I looked at Mom, not shocked, not confused, just prepared. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The stupid kind of giggle that slips when reality tips. I reached into my blazer, pulled out the keys to the black SUV I bought them last year, and set them on the cloth with a soft, heavy clink. Then I guess you won't need this. Silence found its seat. Dad's smile stalled. Mom's hand hovered over her glass. Becca blinked like a metronome skipped. I opened my phone and logged into the joint trust account I'd set up for them, the one that paid their mortgage, covered Becca's apartment, and their endlessly resurrected credit cards. A few taps, closed, zeroed, done. For the first time all evening, everyone listened. Becca laughed at first, confident a punchline was coming. 30 minutes later, I found her near the back curtains they used to pretend privacy. She was on the phone, pacing, voice tearing at the air. When she saw me, she switched targets, told me I couldn't do this, that I didn't understand, that I was ruining everything. I said nothing. I left her there with the echo. That night was a line in the sand they'd drawn for me. They just didn't expect me to step over it with both feet. I didn't go home. I checked into a downtown hotel and sat at the bar with the game on. I don't follow that team. I just needed something loud and meaningless. When I finally turned my phone back on, 17 missed calls. Becca, 8 times. Mom, 4. The rest from numbers that suddenly remembered who I was now that the faucet had stopped. One message blinked at the top from Noah. "Call when you can. Proud of you for leaving dinner." I stared at it, smiling into the glass. Then a story bubble from Sasha, his ex, popped up. A moody quote about women who punish love with money. No tag. She never needs one. I let both sit there and went upstairs. Morning was merciful. My house smelled like coffee and clean counters. No one had taken Tupperware to help with cleanup in over a year, back when I realized hosting Thanksgiving was just sponsoring logistics for people who didn't say thank you. The doorbell rang. Antara stood there in full makeup, coat still buttoned, holding a pastry box, like it was a passport. "I don't want to pick sides," she said, which, in our family, is the same as picking mine. "But people are calling me. I need to know what happened." I let her in because curiosity is a muscle I refuse to let atrophy. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from 2 mugs, and Tara lowered her voice like the walls had favorites. "They planned it," she said, "for weeks. Told certain people they were cutting the cord with you, that you were toxic, that you used money to control them. The toast was supposed to be a victory lap." I waited for the part where she told me she didn't believe it. It arrived in her eyes before it reached her mouth. "They didn't think you'd actually shut off the money," she added. "They thought you'd storm out, make a scene, cool off. Your mom called me around midnight crying, not because you cut them off, but because she couldn't access one of her accounts to book a post-birthday hotel. She forgot you own that one." I sipped my coffee and tasted relief. It has the flavor of something you paid for twice, once with cash, once with your peace, and finally stopped funding. That's a lot, Antara said softly. Do you want me to pass anything along? Yeah, I said. Pass along Lawson's number. I slid a card across the table. The attorney's name looked like it had already won. She winced. They won't like that. They asked for a new beginning, I said. I'm giving them one. After she left, the house gave back its quiet. It's a miracle when rooms remember how to hold only what you put in them. I gathered my laptop, sat at the dining table, and opened the folder. I hadn't wanted to need screenshots, statements, voicemails cataloged like museum pieces, Mom begging rent with promises signed in air, Dad slurring about a second mortgage he took to surprise Becca with a condo. I didn't post or perform, I just collected. By afternoon, the narrative machine spun up. Cousin chatter threads, aunts texting a mix of concern and audit. Becca posted a story from a tasting room, all stemware in sunlight, captioned, "When some people show you who they are, cheers to independence." 10 minutes later, it came down. Maybe the comments weren't what she expected. I answered Noah with a voice note because texts feel brittle when the stakes get warm. I'm okay, I told him. Last night happened. I did what I had to do. I didn't mention Sasha's story. He doesn't need someone else's speculation served as truth. He sent back, I'm with you. Call later? I saved later like a cookie for after a storm. Evening slid in. I cooked something simple because complexity had been coursing through my body for 24 hours and deserved a timeout. I had just sat down when a knock came that didn't belong to a friend. A suited man stood on my porch with a manila envelope. Ms. Mercer? His tone was professional enough to be a threat. He handed it over, had me sign, and walked away with the efficiency of someone who delivers other people's worst ideas. Inside, a lawsuit. Financial abuse of elderly dependents. They claimed I coerced my parents, exerted undue control, weaponized obligation. A second notice, Becca, alleged harassment with screenshots attached. My texts like, "You left your charger here," and "Rent due the 1st." Evidence, apparently, that I was a tyrant with calendar reminders. I laughed once. It broke in the middle, but landed where it needed to. I didn't post. I didn't call to plead my side to people who prefer performance to proof. I stacked the envelope on my table and opened a clean document titled Receipts. Truth doesn't need a microphone. It needs a filing system. My phone lit up on cue. Block numbers. Unknowns. One familiar name with a last chance tone. I let it all ring. Then I flipped Do Not Disturb and walked the perimeter of my house the way you do when you realize the war left without taking your walls. In the living room window, my reflection looked back and didn't flinch. For the first time in a long time, I felt the smallest thing grow inside me. A quiet that wasn't empty, a peace that didn't ask permission. They wanted a new beginning. So did I. The legal papers sat on my kitchen table for a full day before I opened them again. They looked official, crisp, confident, like lies dressed in business attire. My parents had really done it, sued their own daughter. The headline on the first page, Financial Abuse of Elderly Dependents. The accusation was almost laughable, except it wasn't. It was deliberate, cruel. They didn't want to win. They wanted to humiliate me. I remember whispering to myself, "You wanted independence? You just got it." I called Lawson. He didn't sound surprised. "Expected this," he said, flipping through the digital copies I'd emailed over. "Classic preemptive strike. They're trying to control the story. Good news? You're sitting on enough documented proof to bury this in 5 minutes." He told me not to panic, to let him handle the responses, to not post, not rant, not engage. It sounded simple, until the silence started feeling like guilt. By the end of that week, the lawsuit had already begun to crack. Lily, my quiet younger cousin, posted a short TikTok from her bedroom. No names, no details, just, "When your cousin gets scapegoated by her whole family after being their ATM for a decade." It went viral overnight. 500,000 views by morning. The comments section did what it does best. Investigated. People pieced things together frighteningly fast. Someone found Becca's wine review channel, and within hours, her videos were filled with angry comments calling her privileged and spoiled. 3 days later, the lawsuit was withdrawn. Not because of me, because of the internet. For a moment, I thought it was over, but the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was plotting. Mom and Dad didn't apologize. They started visiting relatives one by one, spinning new stories that I'd lost control, that I was vindictive, that I used money to punish love. Same script, new audience. But this time the audience didn't clap. Relatives started calling me. I always thought something was off, one aunt said. I just didn't want to get involved. Another texted, I'm ashamed I stayed quiet so long. That should have been closure, but I wasn't done. Because people like my parents don't stop when you forgive them. They stop when you take away their tools. So I started small, surgical. First, the SUV. Already repossessed and sold. But instead of keeping the money, I used a fraction of it to buy them a used Honda Civic and had it delivered with a bow and a handwritten note. Let's see how free you really are. They didn't return it. They also didn't thank me. Then I canceled the family phone plan. Apparently, none of them realized how much of their lives ran through that number. Becca lost access to her business accounts and followers overnight. Mom couldn't get into her email. Dad missed 3 golf outings because no one could reach him. 3 days later, I texted Becca a screenshot from 2 years ago. Her message begging me to set up that business line because she didn't understand contracts. No caption, just that. Then came the mortgage clause. Years ago, Dad had begged me to co-sign a refinance. My lawyer slipped in a clause back then, quietly. If either party publicly severed familial ties, repayment could be accelerated. 5 minutes of paperwork later, I activated it. The bank notified them they now owed the full balance in 30 days. That's when the real panic began. Mom called first. Her voice was sugar-laced panic. You can't be serious, Jackie. This isn't funny. This is your family. I didn't respond. She left 3 voicemails, each one worse than the last. First calm, then angry, then broken. I did everything for you, she said in the last one. You'll regret this. Maybe she was right, but regret wasn't the same as surrender. Then Dad showed up, at my office. My assistant called, whispering, There's a man downstairs yelling your name. Says you're destroying your own blood. Call building security, I told her. When they escorted him out, he turned to the lobby camera and gave it the finger. I clipped the footage and texted it to him with a caption. New family photo. No response. That night, I sat on the couch, laptop open, wine untouched. Noah called. I almost didn't pick up. When I finally did, his voice was soft. Hey, you okay? Define okay. I saw the lawsuit stuff online. Jackie, I just don't want to see you turn into them. That hit harder than he knew, because part of me had started to wonder the same thing. Do you think I'm wrong? I asked. I think you're hurt, he said. And when you're hurt, you build walls out of paperwork. I wanted to argue, but all I said was, maybe. We talked for another hour, about work, about his ex, Sasha, who apparently had been asking mutual friends how I was doing. I laughed. Of course she is. He didn't laugh back. When we hung up, I stared at the dark TV screen until my reflection blurred. The next morning, my doorbell rang again. It was Aunt Linda, the relative who'd stopped showing up years ago. She didn't waste time with small talk. I saw what happened, she said, and I think you need to see something. From her purse, she pulled a folder. Old, yellowed. Inside, photocopies of loan papers, refinancing documents, fake signatures. One of them was my grandfather's name, used long after he'd died. They've been doing this for years, Linda whispered. Your parents, they forged, borrowed, faked everything. You're not crazy, Jackie. You're just the first one who said no. I stared at the papers, speechless. The war I thought was over was only just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. The papers Aunt Linda had given me sat on the coffee table like open wounds. Old refinance documents, fake co-signatures, loans in Grandpa's name years after he'd passed. My family hadn't just used me. They'd been using everyone. By morning, the shock had turned into focus. If they'd built a kingdom on lies, I was going to make sure the walls came down the right way. I called Lawson first. He listened without interrupting, then said, You've got something bigger than fraud between relatives. You've got a pattern. Give me everything. I scanned every document, every signature, and sent it to him. Next, I called Lily. She didn't sound surprised either. I've been waiting for this, she said quietly. You're not the only one they've taken from. That evening, I drove to her house. 10 people were already there when I arrived, relatives I hadn't seen in years. The air was tense, like a courtroom before the verdict. Aunt Linda stood at the center, holding her folder. They've been stealing from all of us, she said. It's time someone made them answer. Cousin Rachel nodded. They borrowed $5,000 from me and never paid it back. Then they told people I was unstable. Uncle Mike added, they forged my name on a tax document. I didn't even find out until the IRS called me. Story after story spilled out. Different voices, same betrayal. Every confession lit another match. Then Linda turned to me. Jackie, you know how to handle numbers. You can keep records clean. Help us burn them the right way. I looked around the room, faces tired, hopeful, angry. This wasn't vengeance anymore. It was survival. I'll do it, I said. For the first time in months, I felt something close to purpose. I spent the next 3 days combing through files, pulling bank records from public databases, and connecting the dots. Lawson looped in a forensic accountant he trusted. When she saw the names, she actually paused. Oh, she said. Them. Apparently, my parents had made enough noise years ago to be remembered by professionals. She took the case pro bono, for the fun of it. While the legal gears turned, Lily was already lighting the fire online. Her TikTok had turned into a short documentary on YouTube, When Family Turns You into an ATM. 10 minutes of receipts, blurred voice memos, pixelated texts, enough context for anyone who knew us to see the truth. Within 48 hours, it hit 1 million views. That was the day everything started falling apart, for them. Dad's golf buddy, the same one who clapped during his new beginning toast, pulled out of their joint business venture. Mom tried to go on social media, posting a cryptic Bible verse about forgiveness. Aunt Linda commented under it, "Start packing." The post vanished in an hour. Then came the letter, a certified envelope from the IRS, signature required. Uncle Mike, who had a friend at the post office, gave us a heads up. He texted, "Delivered 10:37 a.m." By noon, Mom had called half the family crying about a misunderstanding. No one answered. That night, I opened a group chat filled with unread messages from Becca. "You've ruined our lives. You're sick." Then, minutes later, "Please tell them it was all Dad. I didn't know." But she did. I had her voice memo saved, the one where she called me a doormat with a wallet. I never planned to release it, but Lily already had. It played halfway through her new video. By morning, Becca had lost 2 sponsorships. Her inbox was flooded with angry DMs. One brand demanded a refund. She sent me a desperate email. "I'll pay you back. Just talk to them, please." I didn't reply. Meanwhile, Lawson filed a formal report. He copied the entire package: loans, signatures, forged documents, proof of trust diversion, and sent it directly to the estate attorney handling Grandpa's will. Within 24 hours, the inheritance distribution was frozen, pending investigation. The same day, Noah showed up at my door. He'd flown back early. "Jackie," he said quietly, "what are you doing?" I stared at him, too tired for defense. "Cleaning up the mess they left." "This is a lot. You've made your point." "Have I?" I asked, because last week they were still telling people I was crazy. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I just don't want to watch you become what you hate." I looked away. "Then don't watch." He didn't argue, just nodded, stepped back, and said, "Call me when this is over, if it ever is." Then he left. His absence felt heavier than all the evidence combined. Later that night, Dad showed up again, quiet this time. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just left a manila envelope with my name scrawled across it at the reception desk downstairs. Inside, 5 pages of handwritten apology. The last line cut off mid-sentence. Taped to the corner was a check for $10,000, the exact amount I'd last wired for their mortgage. It wasn't closure. It was surrender disguised as decency. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the check until the edges blurred. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just exhaustion, because no matter how many lies you expose, you can't fix people who mistake consequences for cruelty. The next morning, Lily called. "Are you free Sunday?" she asked. "Aunt Linda's planning something. Everyone's coming, even them." "What kind of something?" She hesitated. "The kind where the truth doesn't hide behind screens anymore." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the pile of documents on my table, at the check, at the empty space where Noah used to be. Then I said, "I'll be there." Sunday arrived too quietly for what it promised to hold. The air was bright, the kind that lies about peace. I drove to Aunt Linda's house with the windows cracked, hands steady on the wheel. Though every mile felt like I was approaching a reckoning I couldn't reverse. When I pulled up, I saw folding tables lined across her backyard. Grill smoke, pitchers of lemonade, a strange sense of normal trying to disguise what everyone knew was about to happen. Lily waved me over. They showed up, she whispered, and there they were. Mom, overdressed in a white blazer like she was attending her own redemption arc. Dad, a step behind her, shoulders heavy but jaw still locked in defiance. Becca, hiding behind oversized sunglasses, scrolling through her phone as if the world wasn't watching her unravel. People shifted in their seats. The sound of cicadas filled the silence no one wanted to break. Then Aunt Linda stepped forward, a folder clutched to her chest. "We're not here to humiliate anyone," she began. "We're here to make sure it never happens again." She opened the folder and started distributing copies. The refinancing documents, the trust records, the forged signatures. Paper after paper, each one another nail in the coffin of their denial. Dad didn't reach for his. Mom scanned hers quickly, lips trembling but not from shame, from rage. "You're taking this too far," she hissed. "This is family business. You don't air it in public." Linda didn't flinch. "You stopped being family when you started forging names." Mom opened her mouth again, but Rachel stood up first. Her voice didn't shake. She began reading from a list. Every relative who'd ever loaned them money, paid for their emergencies, or covered their mistakes. Names, dates, amounts. It took her 7 full minutes. No one interrupted. When she finished, she folded the paper neatly and said, "We're done paying for your chaos." Then Lily plugged a small speaker into her phone. The backyard went dead silent as a voice memo played. Becca's voice, unmistakable. "I'm not worried. Jackie's a doormat with a wallet. She'll come around. She always does." The recording ended. No one breathed. Becca's phone slipped from her hand and hit the grass. She stood slowly, face red beneath her glasses, and walked toward the gate without saying a word. The sound of it closing behind her was louder than any shout. Mom's composure cracked next. "This is cruelty," she whispered. "After everything I did for all of you." But no one answered. Even Dad looked away. That's when I stood up. I'd planned to say something rehearsed, calm, precise. But the words that came out were simpler. "I'm done." I reached into my bag and handed them each an envelope. Inside were copies of documents I'd already filed weeks ago, official papers severing all legal, financial, and personal ties. No more shared accounts, no inheritance claims, no emergency contacts. Mom tore hers open, scanned it, then looked up at me, stunned. "You can't mean this." "I do," I said quietly. "You asked for independence. Now you have it." Dad didn't say a word. He just folded the paper, tucked it into his pocket, and stared at the table for a long time before standing and walking out. He didn't look back. Mom stayed seated, motionless, eyes glossy but dry. The performance was over, and she didn't know who to be without an audience. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. "One more thing," she said. She held up a new stack of papers. "With the fraud exposed, the estate attorney has restructured Grandpa's assets. His house isn't being sold, it's being repurposed." People murmured, confused. Linda continued, "It's now a family trust again, but with rules, real ones. Only those who contribute, financially, through caregiving, or through honesty, can benefit. No exceptions." She looked at me. "Jackie will oversee it." Mom shot up from her seat. "You can't put her in charge." Linda cut her off. "We already did." The yard fell silent again. Then, slowly, one by one, people started to clap. Not loud, not triumphant, just quiet, steady approval. For truth, for boundaries, for freedom. When the gathering broke apart, I stayed behind to help fold chairs and scrape plates. Linda handed me a dish towel and said softly, "You didn't destroy the family, sweetheart. You saved what was left of it." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and kept washing. Later, when the yard emptied and the sun dipped low, I sat alone at the picnic table. The quiet didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. My phone buzzed. Noah, a single text. "I saw the live stream. Proud of you. Call me when you're ready to build something new." For the first time in a long time, I felt ready. I looked around at the fading light, at the place where my family had finally stopped pretending. For years, I'd been their bank, their buffer, their scapegoat. Now, I was just me. Jaslyn Mercer, daughter of no illusions, survivor of her own bloodline. And for once, being alone didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace.